Welcome to today's lecture on energy in ecosystems and a little bit more. Part of today's lecture is going to be a little bit of review, and the rest of it is going to be building on that review to add some new concepts. The main concepts for today are: first, all ecosystems have abiotic limiting factors that have greater impact on populations than other abiotic factors. Second, every species has a range of tolerance for survival in their environment. Thirdly, energy flow through food webs and food chains in an environment follow the second law of thermodynamics. And last but not least, an ecosystem's productivity can be measured by the gross primary productivity and net primary productivity of its producers. Our first bit of review is about the organization of ecosystems. They have both biotic and abiotic components. The biotic components are living and once living organisms and their parts. So plants, animals, microbes, the dead bits of those plants, animals, and microbes, and the waste that all of these living organisms create. The abiotic factors are the non-living components: water, air, nutrients, rocks, heat, and solar energy. Range of tolerance. Every species has different physical and chemical needs from their environment. Ideal temperatures, amounts of water, amount of daylight, that kind of thing. And environments aren't static, they're constantly changing. So every species has a range of tolerance to variations in those physical and chemical needs that the environment provides. The example I've provided is looking at the population size of trout depending on the water temperature. Now, there's an optimum range where the population of trout is rather large. We could say that this is between 16 and 22 degrees Celsius. Our peak population with greatest amount of growth and reproduction is at about 19 degrees Celsius. Once you move out of this optimum range, dropping a couple degrees below 16 degrees Celsius or a couple degrees above 22 degrees Celsius, there are very few organisms, trout in this case, that are actually surviving, much less being able to grow or to reproduce. Once you exceed their lower limit, drop the temperature below, say, 13 degrees Celsius, or their higher limit of tolerance, say raising the water temperature above 25 degrees Celsius, the trout have become so stressed they can no longer survive and the population size goes down to zero. This is one example, but it can be applied to various other organisms and various other physical and chemical needs. For example, the amount of rainfall over a period of time for corn, or how salty, or the salinity of the water, for fresh or saltwater fish. Limiting factors are abiotic factors that are more important than others in regulating population growth. The examples that I gave for the range of tolerance are actually some of the most common chemical requirements that are considered limiting factors. For plants, nitrogen and phosphorus are incredibly important, along with water, access to water, temperature, and access to light. These aren't just required for plants, but they can also be limiting factors and are limiting factors for most other organisms on the planet. The limiting factor principle states that too much or too little of any abiotic factor can limit or prevent growth of a population, even if all other factors are at or near the optimal range of tolerance. Our example here is 3 different begonias. I believe they are dragon-winged begonias for those people who are botany and plant enthusiasts. Now, our underwater plant has obvious repercussions. There's not enough water pressure to have the plant hold itself up, and there's not enough water to use for photosynthesis, so the leaves are withering. Overwatering, however, has its own set of consequences. Even though the plant is grown tall, the water is diluting the amount of nutrients that are being transferred between the different parts of the plant, so that various areas of the plant, especially the leaves, are not getting the nutrients they need. Secondly, the amount of water is leaving the plant exposed to plant molds, which will set in closer to the soil and will begin to break down the plant itself. Now, I could give other examples with temperature, amount of sunlight, and a lot of these things you can think of on your own. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next thing. Alright, we're back to a little review. Food chains, a sequence of organisms, each of which serves as a source of food or energy for the next. Our example is the sun providing energy for our first trophic level, or plants. The second link in the chain is our primary consumer, caterpillar. It's an herbivore. Our secondary consumer is some sort of bird, sort of like a blue jay, but not quite. And then fourth and our final level is a hawk. Now, all of these different levels, some of the animals or organisms die and then are given to the decomposers and detritus feeders. Food webs are when, in any natural ecosystem, many food chains interconnect or overlap, creating a network or web of food chains. Our example here is an aquatic ecosystem. You can see humans are at the top, our apex consumers. We've got some whales, some seals, penguins, fish, squid, birds, and then all of these are based down on our zooplankton, carnivorous plankton, and tiny krill. Our only producer in this food web is phytoplankton. It is the source of energy for this entire food web. So when we talk about energy flow through food chains and food webs, it is always described as unidirectional, moving in one direction. It also follows the second law of thermodynamics, and energy flow is measured as the stored chemical energy in each trophic level's biomass. Biomass is the dry weight of all organic matter contained in its organisms. So, this stored chemical energy is the energy stored in the bonds between all of the different atoms used to create the various different organisms in the trophic levels. This is not just the bonds in sugar created by photosynthesis that are broken in respiration. It's every single bond. The ones between carbon in your proteins, the ones between nitrogen and phosphorus in your DNA. Every single atom that is linked to another atom is storing chemical energy in those links or bonds between the two atoms. I want to actually show a diagram of this and make sure that everybody understands the difference between the energy flow through an ecosystem and the nutrient flow through an ecosystem. So, in the nutrient flow of an ecosystem, we never actually lose the nutrients that we are using. It starts as an inorganic nutrient pool here. The producers take up those nutrients, use them to help create the body of the producer, or use it in their various processes. The producers are then consumed, and all of that nutrients is taken into the consumers, and they are passed through the various levels of consumers. Then as the producers and consumers die, the decomposers take their dead flesh, break it down, and take these nutrients, which have been organic in the producers and the consumers, and break it down back into the inorganic form it was in to start with, in the soil, if you're a terrestrial organism, or suspended in the water in an oceanic or aquatic ecosystem. Now, energy flow is different. Each step of the way through the trophic levels or a food chain or food web, the energy is not 100% conserved. The second law of thermodynamics says that we lose it every single time we transfer energy from one kind to another. So we take solar energy as producers and convert it into usable energy through photosynthesis. The energy in photosynthesis is then used to rearrange the bonds between various different chemicals to organize them into a way that helps the producers to grow. As the producers are then consumed by the When the producers are converting the solar energy into usable energy, some of it is lost as low-quality heat. The consumers then eat the producers, take in these chemical bonds, and in the process of breaking down those chemical bonds created in the producers, some of that energy is lost as heat again. Both producers and consumers are decomposed by decomposers, and in the process of breaking down those bonds, making new bonds, some of that energy, instead of being conserved and used, is being lost as heat. So we have 3 different ways that heat is being released as a form of energy. So if you want to take notes on what I just said, that's what the next slide is about. So, in summary of what I just said through the diagram, a chunk of the usable chemical energy is lost as low-quality heat, according to the second law of thermodynamics, which I abbreviated here as thermo. The percentage actually transferred between trophic levels is called ecological efficiency. This ecological efficiency is only 2% to 40% of the total energy available. So that means between each trophic level transfer, we lose about 60 to 98% of the energy provided by the previous trophic level. This means that, so when we're talking about this, that's a pretty big range. So scientists have figured out that the average ecological efficiency is about 10%. If you take that assumption that we've lost 90% of the energy as heat and 10% of the energy is actually conserved or transferred up to the next trophic level, you create a trophic level diagram. Now, our producers say they get about 10,000 kilocalories. Then the first level of primary consumers, when they eat the producers, only get 1,000 usable kilocalories from those producers. The perch, our secondary consumers in this example, which are a type of fish, then only get 100 kilocalories per zooplankton they eat instead of the full 1,000. And humans, instead of getting the full 100 kilocalories from each perch, would only get 10. As you can see, each time we go up the trophic level, we lose heat energy when we are doing this chemical process of breaking down the previous level to gain energy. Decomposers, because they feed off of all the different levels, get a block to the side, but they also, as they take each of these levels, lose some of that energy as heat as well. Now, I'm going to stop here because I'm about to hit my 15-minute limit. We'll pick this back up with the next set of slides.